my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Um, there's a bunch of questions this week. I got a ton of books to show, but if you have a question you want answered, put it in the comments below, and I will answer it next week. Let's get right into it, though. The first question comes from Raz Hoons, who wrote, "How many comic books do you own?" Well, I own probably anywhere from 20 to 30,000 based on, I figure I have about 100 to 120 boxes of comics. So if you do the math, it's kind of like any box can hold about 200 to like 300 books. So 20 to 30,000, probably maybe more than that, but I'm thinking it's around that number. I haven't counted. Do you keep a spreadsheet of all the books with all the books listed? What I actually do is I keep multiple spreadsheets. I have all my comic shop orders. I have all my Heritage Auction orders. Have all my eBay orders, and I have like all my orders from big dealers that I work with. So I kept all those in like sort of files. And then I've been using the Hip Comics app to basically track the other comics that I don't necessarily track through those other methods. With the Hip app, what you can do is you can take pictures of the covers, and it'll automatically record what the comic is, and the title and everything, and then you can put in the grade and whether it's graded or not and all that kind of stuff. And it gives you even a value of the comic, basically. So I've been using that app to try to catalog as much of my collection as possible. So far, I've done about 2,000 books. Have a lot more to go. But yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. It's one of those things I have to find the time to go and photograph everything. It doesn't take that long to use the app, but it takes time to, it's hard finding the time to actually use the app, if that makes sense. The next question you asked is similar to somebody else's question, so I'm going to kind of combine two questions together. You also mentioned that you don't like reprints. You don't own any omnibuses. Do you own any omnibuses or collected editions besides the freebies you recently got from DC? Mark Webb also asked, so Mark Webb asked a similar question. You mentioned in 12.4 video, which is December 4th video, that you're opposed to reprints. I'm curious as to why. Obtaining many keys is cost prohibitive for most of us, not to mention that if they're slabbed, they're unreadable by default. Reprints offer the ability to read some of those classic stories that we would otherwise miss out on. I'm in the process of collecting the EC archive reprints and having a ball. Thoughts? Okay, so I don't necessarily like reprints, but the reason for that is I kind of like to own that original copy. And I will actually kind of set my goals to achieve that someday with a lot of these bigger books. I just like the idea of owning that first appearance. And generally, if I'm going to read the story, like if I'm really wanting to own the book to read the story, I'll actually just read it online. So most of the time I read my books online anyways. So I know a lot of people like to have the tangible book in their hands, but I actually prefer reading it online because it's a little easier with my vision kind of failing in terms of nearsightedness or far. I'm nearsighted, but my nearsightedness is fading. So I find it's easier to read online because you can zoom in and it's just easier to read. So that's kind of where I've been shifting to more online reading. I did pick up recently, actually, like maybe like 6-7 months ago, or maybe a year ago, actually, now that I think about it, the EC archives as well. So this is Haunt of Fear EC archives, and it has a bunch of the EC stories in it. And I actually did read this book. So I do like EC, and I do try to pick up the original books that they mention in this archive. I have actually a few of them. I think I have actually, well, no, just one. I have this one. But yeah, so I do try to pick them up. I actually prefer to have the original, just to have that original book, but I do read sometimes the the archives and stuff. So yeah, I think it's cool to that, like, read the comics the way you want to read it. I'm not like dissing anyone that buys reprints or omnibuses. If you prefer it that way, then it's cool. I actually really enjoyed the fact that I got the ones from DC Comics. Those were pretty cool, and it's kind of fun to read them. So yeah, I know it sounds very chaotic in terms of the way I think about it, but you know, I'm a bit of a purist in terms of collecting, so that's why I generally prefer the originals over the reprints. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. I like what I buy wrote. Can you show some underrated adventure comics? Okay, so I pulled out a bunch of keys from my adventure comics collection. I actually don't have a massive adventure comics collection, but I probably have about twice as many as I'm about to show. So maybe that's a lot. I don't know. So I'll show the raw ones first, and then I'll get into the slabs, because there's a bunch of slabs here too. So the first is Adventure Comics 260. And this is the first like origin story for the Silver Age of Aquaman. And it's also the first appearance of Atlanta, who, is, Queen Atlanta, which is Atlanta, which is his mother, kind of gives that origin story of Aquaman for the Silver Age. And then we have Adventure Comics 266, which is the first appearance of Aqua Girl, and her name is Lisa Mora, and Moral, I should say, Moral, and she is a one-shot character. She only appears in this book and was never reused, so it's Aqua Girl. And then we got Adventure Comics 269, which is the first appearance of Aqua Lad, who later becomes the Tempest. So this is his first appearance. Then we have Adventure Comics 275, which is kind of the origin of the Superman-Batman team-up. It gives that origin story. It actually even says that. I love when books tell you what the key is. It says it right there. It makes it very convenient. So yeah, origin of the Superman-Batman team up. Yeah, so kind of useful. Then we got Adventure Comics 283, which is the first appearance of the Negative Zone, or Phantom Zone, I should say, Phantom Zone. And it's the first appearance of General Zod, who's a major villain for Superman, and in the movies, so pretty major character. So then we have Adventure Comics 285, which is the first appearance of the Bizarro Legionnaires. Or actually, no. What am I saying on that? That's totally wrong. Don't listen to that. This is the first appearance of the Bizarro World. So, Tales from the Bizarro World. Kind of a major key for, Bizarro collectors. And then we have 293. This is the first appearance of the Legion of Super Pets. And it's also the second appearance of General Zod. And it's the first appearance of Bizarro Lex Luthor. So a whole bunch of cool keys related to this book. This is a very under-the-radar, underappreciated book. Legion of Super Pets. This one kind of went a little bit up during the movie hype, but has since dropped. So this is a pretty good one to pick up, though. Then we have 294. And this is the first appearance of Bizarro JFK and Bizarro Marilyn Monroe. So, and this one's interesting because it came out reasonably, I think it was around the time that JFK died. So it kind of has a little bit of extra significance in that respect. So kind of an interesting one. Then we have Adventure 295, which is the first appearance of Bizarro Titano, right there. And also has a cameo for Bizarro as well. Then we have 303, which is the first appearance of Matter Eater Lad. And then we have 304, which is the death of Lightning Lad. And then we have 313, which is the first appearance of Satan Girl. Kind of a cool character, kind of an alter ego for Supergirl. And she tries to kill all the Legionnaires. So that's always fun. And then we have Adventure Comics 317. This is the first appearance of Dream Girl. It even says it, which is always convenient. I love that. Then we have Adventure 329, which is the Legion of Bizarro Legionnaires. So this is the Bizarro Legionnaires. That's why I messed that up earlier, but I got it right here. Okay, so this is Bizarro Legionnaires. And then this is Adventure 352, which is the Fatal Five. So you get them on the cover there. And then we have Adventure 365, which is the first appearance of Shadow Lass. So that's a cool book. And then we have Adventure Comics 428, which is the first appearance of the Black Orchid. Again, I love it when it's right on the cover, and you got the character right on the cover too, which is really nice. So yeah, so those are my raw books. Then we'll get into some of my slabs. We got Adventure 308, which is the first appearance of a whole bunch of characters, actually. Does it say on the cover? Of course it doesn't. So I think it's like Elongated Girl and stuff like that. There's a bunch of characters that sort of, whenever they do this kryptonite thing where it mutates them, a whole bunch of characters are created. I think it's Elongated Girl is the character that makes her first appearance in this book. I'm surprised it doesn't say on the cover. That's really dumb. CBCS, do better. It doesn't say. Okay, but it is a first appearance of a bunch of characters. And then we have Adventure Comics 322. This is the first cover appearance and homage to 247. This is the Legion of Super Pets. So first cover appearance of them and an homage. And then we have Adventure 247, which is the first appearance of the Legion of Superheroes. So, and it's also the first appearance of the Legion. So you got the first appearance of Satin Girl, Lightning Boy, and Cosmic Boy. So their first appearances as well. And then we have 210, which is the first appearance of Crypto. So kind of a cool first appearance. I love my Super Pets. So this is the first appearance of Crypto. And then we have Adventure Comics number 61, which is the first appearance of Starman. And I love it when they're on the cover like this. Really cool. And last for my collection that I'm going to show is Adventure Comics number 214, which is the second appearance of Crypto. So if you like Crypto, those are the big ones to get, 210 and 214. Okay, so that's some Adventure Comics. There's a bunch there that I think, a lot of them are fairly affordable. You can pick them up fairly affordably, and they're cool. I mean, I like Adventure Comics. There's a lot of fun ones there. Okay, Adrift wrote, I see a ton of comics on eBay and Instagram that feature famous superheroines and Disney princesses in various stages of undress or completely naked. Who is creating these and how are they bypassing copyright laws? So I'm going to show a couple from my collection. And they are. This one was created by Pharaoh's Lounge, and it's a Jessica Rabbit, and it also has John Wick on it, so a couple characters. I had to censor it. Then we have another one, which is Elsa. I again had to censor it, but it's a pretty sexy version of Elsa. Now you're wondering, how did they get away with this? Well, they get away with it because of a couple things. One, these characters, Jessica Rabbit is kind of iffy, but a lot of the characters are ones where they are public domain characters or characters from like very old stories, like Little Mermaid, Jasmine from Aladdin. Certain characters like that, they're public domain, so you can pretty much do anything you want. You can make them look kind of like the Disney character, but you make them a little bit more busty or whatever it is, and you can get away with it. So that's generally what they're doing. They're kind of modifying the characters so that they are similar to the Disney ones, but not necessarily infringing upon copyright. They have to make them slightly different. The other thing is they will generally use, they won't name the character. So for example, like if you say this is Elsa from Frozen, you're going to totally get into trouble with the copyright. Definitely. But they don't do that. So they sort of suggest it's those characters, but they don't openly say it is those characters. So it's kind of skirting around the copyrights. Another thing is you're allowed to parody. You're allowed to parody other comics or books, and again, there's ways that you can do that. So those are kind of the ways that they get around the rules. But there have been times where people have gone too far, and I'll give you an example of that with this book. This is Air Pirates, where they actually name it the character Mickey Mouse. And this is a cover swipe of a book that Disney put out with Mickey Mouse. So this is a cover swipe. They changed a few things. They added dope on the back. This is an adult comic where it was deliberately designed to encourage the wrath of Disney. So this one did end up going to court. It was a big, long lawsuit that was drawn out for a long time. And the reason the guy did it is he's really trying to, go against Disney and how powerful Disney was. It was like fighting against the power. Underground comics were really trying to, stick it to the man kind of thing. And they saw Disney as the man. So this one is an example of that. And it ran 2 issues, actually, only ran 2 issues. And it was eventually the case that they lost for obvious copyright infringement and also defamation, I believe, was part of it as well. So it's an example of how things can go horribly wrong. And I can even show you the back. I'll show you the back as well. So but I think a lot of those publishers, what they're doing is they're skirting around it because they're not naming the characters. They're making them slightly different. Whether you agree with it or not, they seem to do well with these covers of the various Disney princesses and superheroines. Okay. Next question comes from J-Lo. I have a question maybe for next week's show. If you had to collect literally just one comic book series for the rest of your life, based on its high potential value 75 years from now, what would it be? For example, only X-Men, Fantastic Four, Chamber of Chills, Spider-Man, etc. Okay, I would either choose a Spider-Man title or a Batman title. If I'm going purely on, speculating 75 years into the future. And there's a few reasons why I chose either of those two titles. Both of them are long-running titles. I think Batman is from 1939, 38, somewhere around there. I think 39. And Spider-Man is 1962, I believe. So yeah, so you get those characters have been around for a long time, almost almost 75 years already each. Well, Batman has been around that long. So they're established characters that have that longevity. And if you ask any young person today, like if you ask them about Black Cat or Torchy or some character that I like that is from the Golden Age, they probably wouldn't know who they are. However, you ask them who Spider-Man is or Batman, they probably know it. Even at a very young age, like a 3-year-old probably would know those characters. So those people that are that young, if they know them, they'll probably know them, hopefully if their memory doesn't fade, when they're in their 70s. So, I think there is that longevity based on just people knowing these characters. It's kind of one of those things. You pick characters that you think will have staying power if you're really projecting for 75 years. A lot of characters, though, they might not know. I remember I brought a friend over to my house, and he had some young children. And they all sort of knew the Hulk. Actually, I was surprised they knew the Hulk, they knew Spider-Man, they knew Batman, but they didn't know X-Men. They didn't know a lot of the characters that I would have thought, young kids would know. They didn't know X-Men, they didn't know Fantastic Four. They weren't familiar with those characters at all. So really, it's the Spider-Man and the Batman that are kind of the most well-established characters universally. So those are the ones I would choose. Also, if I'm going to be collecting one series, I'd pick something like a Batman or Spider-Man for the reason that they have ongoing books that are constantly coming out. So the fact that they are doing that gives me something to collect. If it's something like Chamber of Chills that you mentioned, well, that series is one and done. They're not producing new comics, so it'd be very boring, especially if I have to do that for the rest of my life. So that's another reason behind it. Okay, next question comes from Son of Crom. Do you think Canada will ever stop having the British royalty on their currency? No, I don't really think so. Canada is very proudly part of the Commonwealth, and all the Commonwealth countries do put the monarch on the bills. So we are very proudly part of that. I mean, it's what really I mentioned in the previous video where I said there's differences between Canadians and Americans. One of the things that distinguishes Canadians is the fact that we were loyal to the crown. So I see it as something that is going to be there for a long time, where we have the royalty on our currency. What are your top 10 books that you would love to own in your lifetime that you don't have already? Okay, so I made a list of my top 10 like dream books, I guess. But every year, actually, I do make my yearly list where I say, these are the books that I would want for 2024 or 2025 or whatever it is. I will be putting out that list later this year. So, and I'll actually be putting out 2 videos. One where I'll put out my, and I'll do it in January for the 2025 one, where I'll say, these are the books that I'm hunting down for 2025. And then for this year, I'll be putting out my how did I do list in terms of my 2024 list, where I'll be showing all the books that I listed on my list and how many of them actually I got. I think I got 7 out of the 10 that I was aiming for. But this list that I'm going to tell you right now are my dream books. These are ones like if I had $1 billion, these are the books that I would buy. I'm actually going to have like a special star one as well. So star this one book. But let's get into them. My first would be Whiz Comics number 1, 2. Some like it's actually not numbered as number 1. It's actually labeled as number 2, but it's the very first appearance of Captain Marvel. So I always wanted to have that book. The next one would be Flash Comics number 1, which is the first appearance of Hawkman and the Flash. Then we'd have Crime Patrol number 15, which is the first appearance of the Crypt Keeper. I'd love to own that book. I almost bought a copy, and I was talked out of it, and I regret the fact that I was talked out of it. Number 4 on my list is Detective Comics number 31, which is the classic Batman cover, with the mountain and him sort of standing over it. And then number 5 on my list would be Detective 27, which is the first appearance of Batman. Number 6 is Motion Pictures Funnies Weekly, which is the very first appearance of the Submariner. It's a cool book. It's very obscure. It's hard to find. I always wanted to have a copy of that. I actually got to hold a copy of it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Number 7 would be Marvel Comics number 1. This is the very first Marvel comic, and it's also the first appearance of the Human Torch. So kind of a cool book. Number 8 would be Superman number 1. Just a cool book. It's like an iconic book. I just always wanted that. Number 9 would be Batman 1. Always wanted to own a Batman 1. I almost bought the same copy that Steven bought, but he was a little bit quicker on the jump on it. And I was like, so I missed out on that one. Number 10 on the list is Action Comics number 1. Of course, you might as well, if you're going to get a dream list, you're going to have to pick books that are, dream books. That's the biggest book in comics. So, and my number 11, this is kind of a book that in a weird, sounds like a joke, but it's actually pretty high on my want list, is Zombie Tramp number 3. I am so annoyed that I can't find a copy of Zombie Tramp number 3. Just a ghost comic. It's hard to find, and I've been looking. I've seen one so far, and I missed out on it. So it's one of those books that I've been trying to find. Okay, so next question comes from AJ Aguez. Do you consider the first appearance of Martian Manhunter a Golden Age or Silver Age comic? It came out before Showcase number 4, but it has the Comic Code Authority logo on the book. Okay, so I'm going to show it. So this is the first appearance of the Martian Manhunter. And you can see that it has the massive, it's really huge, Comic Code Authority stamp on it. And for me, I'm a purist. For me, the Comic Code Authority stamp represents the end of the Golden Age. So really the Golden Age is the Wild West of the comics, where they could do pretty much anything that they wanted, to an extent. And the Comic Code Authority put an end to that. So really, for me, the Golden Age, it's not a Golden Age book because it has the stamp on it. Now, this came out in November of 1955, which is really close to when the Golden Age ended, or when the first Comic Code Authority stamps were put on books. And it was actually March of 1955 that they did that. So this is right at that transfer from golden to silver. A lot of people, well, I consider the start of the Silver Age as being 1955 and then April. So right after the Comic Code Authority comes into play. However, with DC books, DC itself and a lot of DC collectors consider Showcase number 4 to be the first Silver Age DC book. And the reason they count that as being the first Silver Age book for DC is the fact that really Showcase number 4, I should say, is the book that really redefined the superhero characters. It redefined the Flash. And we have a whole bunch of books that came out beyond the code numbering, where, for example, like Wonder Woman, it's Wonder Woman 98, which is the first Silver Age Wonder Woman, even though that is well beyond when the code actually was first put on a Wonder Woman book, which was in Wonder Woman 73. So, that's like several years later after the code has been added. So it's really about for DC collectors, it's really about when those new origin stories and new versions of the characters came out, and that kind of defines the Silver Age era for DC Comics. With all that being said, what is this? Well, I consider this an Atomic Age comic. So Atomic Age is one of those ages that actually straddles both the Golden Age and the Silver Age. It's from really 1946 all the way up to 1960 is the Atomic Age. And it's really defined by the atomic bomb being dropped. In 1945, it became like a new age where really changed the style of comics that were being put out. You had a shift from superhero comics to a whole bunch of new genres like pre-code horror, good girl, crime, romance books. Those all started appearing in the Atomic Age. And this is an Atomic Age book. So that would be my answer. Final answer is this is an Atomic Age book. So neither silver or golden, if that makes sense. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Next question comes from B.W. Nunley. Any recommendations on pre-code horror sci-fi runs to get started that aren't insanely expensive? Now, if you're trying to go for the full run, it's pretty hard. There's a lot that are really, really expensive. But I will give you a few that I think where you can get single issues that are actually very, very affordable. So Atlas, which is a Marvel imprint, had its own was the imprint for Marvel that was horror related, and Atlas comics are fairly affordable. And compared to so many other pre-code horror books, they're very affordable, like $100, $200, maybe even like in lower grade, maybe like $50. Like to me, that's affordable. Like when I think of pre-code horror, I think of thousands of dollars. Well, to me, $100 to $200 is affordable. So, take that with whatever way you want to take that. If you think that's really expensive, well, I'm sorry. It is what it is. So here's some examples. So this is Mystic. I think I paid like $100 or something like that for this. It wasn't super expensive. It's kind of a cool pre-code horror cover, and it's reasonable grade too. So, and then we have, this is another one I spent maybe that $100 to $200 range, and it's like suspense. It's kind of cool pre-code horror. These are all from Atlas. And then we have, this one was a little bit more expensive. You can see I actually talked them down on that price. It says $250, but I actually talked them down. I think it was like 100 and something, 180, I think I want to say. But it's a really cool cover. I love this cover. It's really awesome. So this is another Atlas book. So this is Weird Worlds, Adventures into Weird Worlds number 9. And it's just a really cool one. Russ Heath cover. Just a really cool book. And then we got some more Adventures into Weird Worlds. It's a really fun one. I'll be actually showing this again soon because I'm going to be using it for a cover challenge. But it's a cool one. Adventures into Weird Worlds. And then we have another title that I was thinking. So Toby Press actually put out a comic that actually has a lot of affordable issues. There's one or two that are super expensive in the run, but this is actually a pretty affordable run. It's Tales of Terror. Now, Tales of Terror, this is a one-shot, so literally you just buy this one book. The title changes to, it does it say? No, it doesn't say. But it does change to Terror Tales. So it went from Tales of Terror to Terror Tales. There's only one issue which is really, really expensive in Terror Tales. The rest are more that reasonable $100 to $200 range. So yeah, so this is the other one I'd recommend. This book is fairly affordable, and it's not a bad cover. I think it's kind of cool. I always like these ones where, like in the horror movies, they go down into the crypt and there's like some scary thing. You know, they always have the torch and they have to go down into the crypt, and you know, is she going to be a vampire? Who knows what's going to happen? But just a cool book. Cool series, very affordable, and you just have to pick up one to get the whole run for that, but then it changes title. Another ones that you might want to consider would be looking into Ziff Davis. You asked about sci-fi. They also do sci-fi covers as well, sci-fi comics. So you get both pre-code horror and sci-fi if you look up Ziff Davis. There's some really great ones that they put out. Very underrated. A lot of painted covers. If you like painted covers, they specialize in that, and they're just very underrated. I don't know why Ziff Davis doesn't get the love that it deserves, but makes it very affordable to collect. Another series that you might want to try for sci-fi is the one that's right over my shoulder, right here, Planet Comics. Those generally in the low grades will run for anywhere from $100 to $200. In the higher grades, obviously, it gets more expensive, but lots of really great covers. If you like Good Girl plus sci-fi, Planet Comics is definitely the go-to title for that. So those are the ones that I would recommend. There's probably others. Another title that you might want to try, or another company, I would say, is ACG. They actually have like Out of the Shadows and a whole bunch of titles that are fairly affordable. So yeah, definitely check those ones out. Next question comes from Vault Orb. Do you think the Golden Age Charlton, the Thing issues 12 through 15 and 17, the Steve Ditko issues, are a good investment? Yes. Steve Ditko is one of those artists that is well appreciated and loved by collectors. Considered one of the great artists of all time. Actually, number 12 especially is a really great cover by Steve Ditko, and it is his first cover ever. So definitely a cool book to pick up. That's like a kind of a major book for Steve Ditko collectors. So definitely, I think that one has the most value. And actually, of the covers in the run, it's probably the best. It's in that few $100 range. So kind of to answer the previous guy's question about affordable books, the Thing actually has a lot of affordable like covers and comics. You're looking at, for the other issues other than 12. 12 is a bit more pricey, but 13 through 17 are actually fairly affordable, like $200 to $400 range for mid grades. And I do think that they have like value that is fairly steady. With the Golden Age, generally what you have is the following: that you might not see the most exciting explosion in price. Like sometimes you do, but very rarely. But what you see is sort of slow and steady. These are blue chip kind of comics. They hold their value, and they generally grow up over time, slowly but surely kind of thing. So I definitely think those Golden Age Charltons are really, really a good investment, especially because they're quite rare. They're not like ones that you see that often. And generally, they're hard to get in those mid grades even. So definitely ones I'd recommend picking up. Next question comes from K Munin. Are there any comic characters that you would feel would be ruined if they ever went mainstream? What indie comic characters do you feel would have the most success going mainstream? Thanks again, as always, for your insight. Okay, so I'm a big Vampirella fan, and Vampirella, they really, like, tried to make her mainstream. But if you look at Vampirella in the comic books, in the magazines actually, her costume is defying most of the laws of gravity and and physics, I should say, because if you try to run in that costume, things are going to pop out. So it makes it really hard for you to do a live action of her costume, because generally things will pop out. It might be more interesting, actually. I think about it. I actually would love to see that. But that being the case, generally what'll happen when they go mainstream with these characters, they have to make them practical because of the costumes. And generally what they did with Vampirella when they tried to make her mainstream is they made a costume that really didn't work. It kind of made it wasn't flattering, and it was practical, but it didn't really showcase the character. The character is like a vixen. She is somebody who's sexy and a little bit mischievous. She is a cool, she's a cool character that way. So it's like one of the costume kind of is a big portion of the character. So when you remove that sexy vampiness out of her, it kind of gets ruined. Other characters that I can think of that would be kind of the same situation would be like Phantom Lady or Black Cat, where they have these sort of sexy costumes that don't necessarily translate well to like live action. Now, if they do them as cartoons or animated, I should say, then they probably can get away with it, because in an animation you can get away with whatever. You don't have to obey the laws of physics. You can drop anvils on people's heads and they're fine. So that is one way that they could do it, and I think then you could get away with a lot of that part of it. However, that being said, there's another problem with our current society, and I think this is hopefully going to change, is a lot of these characters that I like are on the more sexy side and more traditional women's side as well. And nowadays, with the strong feminist kind of attitudes, a lot of these characters, they just wouldn't do. I think they wouldn't do them the way that they should be done, where they might be not as, like nowadays they would make the women strong and like almost like Mary Sue like, and I really think that does a disservice to the way that the characters were originally written. Like the characters were real women, and when I say real women, they weren't the strongest, most powerful, like able to beat any man kind of women. They were realistic, where they might lose and need to be bailed out. And that's fine. And at the same time, they might be sensitive. They might be, have a lot of those female traits that make men like them. So nowadays, I think a lot of producers and creators are very scared to let women be women. So they would ruin the way that the characters were designed. Now, if they were willing to, maybe showcase the characters in their true forms, I think they would really do well. And actually, I think not only men would appreciate it, but women would appreciate it. I actually think that women like seeing sexy women on screen as well. That's one of the mistakes that the current generation has made, is that they think that women don't like seeing women being sexy, and I think that's a mistake. Women actually are the ones that appreciate it the most, maybe. So it's very, that's one of my issues with the mainstream media, that they have to let people be people, whether they'll do that or not. So that I think, if they can do things where they let characters be themselves, I think they could be great. But it's really up to the way they produce them. So I don't know if that answers the question properly, but hopefully you appreciate my answer. Okay, last question comes from Matt Likes Comics. Do you remember the first run you completed? Yes, I do. The very first run that I ever completed that I really worked hard to try to pick up was The Sandman. Now, when I think of first run, I mean big runs. Like there's like obviously this shorter, like 3 issues or something like that. I probably completed a few of those before I completed Sandman. But Sandman was the first major one that I completed. I was really like driven to complete Sandman, and I think I completed it in 95 or 96. I'm not sure when the last issue came out. It was somewhere around that time period. And what it was is I bought all of the books as they were coming out on the newsstand, except for maybe the first 20 to 30 issues. I didn't really collect Sandman until a little bit later in terms of the run. So then those ones I had to kind of go back and pick up, and I was trying to find them for cheap. And back then, even in the 90s, they were pretty expensive. So it was kind of a little harder to get those books just by the price and lack of money that I had. I was very poor at the time. So I completed my Sandman run, and it's the very first run that I actually sold. So what happened was I met my wife, and she wanted to go to Korea. She's like, don't bring those comics. They're too big and too much to carry. So she was like encouraging me to sell my comics. So I sold off my Sandman run and a bunch of other pretty major books. And I was very sad about that, actually. It's one of my big regrets in terms of my comic collecting history, is like having sold a lot of my complete run of Sandman. And it's one of those runs that I've never actually gone back to try to recomplete. I have picked up the key issues from Sandman, but not the entire run. And part of me is maybe not willing to complete it again because of the fact that I had that negative feeling about it. So I don't know. That's my very first completed run, is the Sandman. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have a question for me for next week, put it in the comments below and I will definitely answer it. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.